Valerie Myers. I'm a senior physician recruiter with Humana's Primary Care Organization. I live in Indiana in America, and but most of my work is down in Florida. And I would consider myself an AI enthusiast, not in robotics or anything like that, but in how we can use tools like ChatGPT and generative AI within platforms like iSpring to really personalize the communications that we have. So, Chris, can I just make sure we can see the slides? Are we great? Okay.
Everything is good.
So I first want you all to read through these different thoughts here, and please in the comments, let me know if any of these thoughts are something that you've ever had before. So I wasted way too long staring at my screen trying to figure out how to respond to that email. Now I'm behind on work. I love his daily LinkedIn posts. How does he do that? I would run out of ideas. I'm not creative enough to come up with stuff like that. Chris, am I hitting it in the comments? Can you let me know if anybody?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it has taken just a tiny little bit of time because there is a little delay between our live streaming and the chat, but I'm already getting comments. 100% yes. I find myself in all of this. So I think we have a lot of people who relate to that.
Okay, and I want you to know that these are all my own thoughts. Okay, these are all things that I've thought at certain times. And what I want to introduce to you today is a different way to use AI, maybe not a way that you've considered before. And it is to personalize your content. So not even just to create new content, but to really personalize what you've already written or messaging specifically for your audience. So there's two different avenues for this that I'm going to be exploring today with a lot of examples that I hope are really useful for everyone. So the first thing I want to talk about is using AI to make personalized responses to incoming messages and emails that you have, and then to adapt or tailor content you might already have specifically to your audience to get them more engaged, make it more memorable, get people talking about the content that you have. And so we're going to start out with the first example here. And this is something I specifically asked ChatGPT, and then you can see the responses here. So I said, rewrite the following statement. Hi, my name's Valerie. It's great to meet you. I'm so thankful that you attended my presentation today. And I asked it to write it like it thought each of the generations that are currently in the workplace would say it. So Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, and Baby Boomer. And so again, please in the comments on YouTube, take a look at the one for your generation and tell me your thoughts here. Do you think that AI got it right? Is this how you think that your generation might engage at the beginning of a presentation? I'm going to say I am a millennial, and I felt a little called out by the I seriously appreciate. I do use the adjective seriously quite a bit, and so I felt slightly called out by that one. You know, some of the others I'm not so sure. Chris, what's the take when it starts coming through? Let me know.
Yeah, we do have some of the answers already, and Gen Z is amazing. Gen X is right. I'm also sure that some people might be taking a little longer time to relate to that because they're counting and calculating what kind of generation am I, right? So might take a little time, but I think the response is, yeah, super, that's great for me, looks good to me. Oh, I don't feel Gen X is right, says Diana.
Okay.
But I agree with millennials, but Gen Z is surprising. We have comments about Gen Z mostly that it's surprising, but the rest look good.
Okay, and yeah, I also was a little surprised by that one as well. But what I think you can see here, you know, no matter how much you think it fits your specific style, is that there is a significant difference between the generations, at least in terms of how the AI views it. And I think this is true. I do think that there are different styles. And so, for example, if I knew, let's say that this presentation today, that 60% or 70% of the attendees were from the baby boomer generation, I can see that there's a difference in how we would speak and present. And that would be something that I would want to think about and tailor the way that I speak to make sure that all of my messaging translates well cross generationally, right? So this is just something for you to think about in an initial example of what I'm talking about. And once you start playing around with this, it's honestly unlimited where you can go with using AI to personalize your content. And everything here is an example that I'm going to be moving through coming up in the presentation. And so I'm going to be using a lot of different use cases. They might not all represent your specific work, but use this as a springboard for yourself to think about how you can integrate AI into your workflow in this way. Because I think that it can, for me at least, it really helps me get through some of those roadblocks and be creative. And if you say, I'm not that creative, ask AI to help you. Ask it, say, I need some ideas for this, right? And it'll give them to you. So before we move into those examples, I want to make sure that we're all grounded in exactly what generative AI is. I know it's been talked about in the conference, but just for the sake of all the attendees, I'm just going to mention it again. So generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that specifically makes new content, and that can be text, images, videos, all different types of creative content. But the way that it does it is interesting in that it's basically taking these downloaded huge data sets. It's very hard to even wrap your mind around how big these data sets are. And it uses these complex computer programs, complex algorithms to basically understand that data and make patterns. So in the last example, it's looking through all of the text and finding patterns in how millennials would speak and how baby boomers would speak. Okay. But the thing that makes it different from other computer programs is that it learns. And when I say learn, I don't mean like a student in school. I don't mean like some of the movies that you might have seen, like iRobot, where there's this independent thinking. What I mean is when you use AI, when you ask it for things and it gives you responses, it takes all of that and adds it to the data to get better. So the more we use it, the more that it learns from that use and gets better. And so that's what I mean when I say learn. It can take all that user data and get better at giving you what you want. But with that said, I think that we have all played around with it at some point, and I know that I hear from a lot of people that they received something really general, or something that didn't really fit the mark. It wasn't usable. It felt like it was written by a computer. And I want to share with you the way that I write an AI prompt so that you can use this as a way for you to build out when you're asking AI for things. I feel that there are 6 important key points that need to be in an AI prompt. And number 1 is, who are you? Who do you want the AI to pretend to be? What type of content do you want? Do you want an email? Do you want a summary of something? Do you want a creative essay? Do you want a LinkedIn post? You need to tell it what kind of content to get that type of content back. Number 3, constraints. You might think this one isn't that important, but in my experience, AI writes like a college kid that's trying to get to 2,000 words. It's a little wordy. And so if you constrain it to the amount that you want, you're going to get a lot closer to a result that fits what you need. Number 4 is kind of going to be most of what we're playing around today, which is tone. So in this case, I wrote in a friendly but professional tone. It could be a highly professional tone meant for C-suite executives. It could be towards high school students, or, that's the audience. But you need to think about how you want to be talking to these people, and that's based on who the audience is. And so let it know who you're writing for. So who are you writing as, and who are you writing for? And then, of course, the last piece is details. Any details that need to be in this communication or content, those also need to be there. So this is how I build out an AI prompt. Why does it need all of this information? I'm going to use an analogy based on my own children. and it's about building Legos. So if you like Legos, if you have kids who like Legos, I actually build them. Here's a little bird that I built this spring. If you have, let's imagine that all the data that is in the AI is a different Lego piece. If you have them in a giant bucket, all the pieces are there, but it's very difficult for me to get to that bird with no framework for it, with this giant bucket of all these different things. Whereas if you've ever bought a new Lego set, all the pieces come organized and you have this perfect instruction booklet to build out step by step exactly what you want. That's what we're doing for the AI here. We are giving it the instruction booklet to build out exactly what we're asking for. So again, that's how I would approach it. I have a handout that's going to be in the files here that has this 6 components of a great AI prompt. So you can check that out after the presentation. And so I'm going to move into my first example now, and this one is going to be how I would address writing a response. Okay, so this goes back to that thought bubble of I sat there for way too long trying to figure out how to answer that email when I had a lot of other things to do. So for this specific case, the situation is a professor has received an email from a student that their grandmother is in the hospital, and the trickle down effect of that is that they are going to need to be off campus and not in class, and they need an extension on a paper. So you might be looking at this and thinking, I know exactly how I would respond to that. This isn't something I need help with. And that's fine. Okay. I want you to think about your own use case for the type of email or an example from the past that has tripped you up. Okay. And I'm going to go through the process of how I would get AI to help me come up with the response that I want. And so you can see on the right here, my prompt, I used that framework that we just talked about. And basically I'm telling the AI, I want an email response. I want it to be professional, but empathetic, to address this issue here, give the student what they were asking for. And it doesn't need to be long. It just needs to be 100 words or less. And I want it to end with well wishes for them and their family. And I specifically want to note here that I did not copy and paste the exact email. I took out all of the identifiers from the email that I shared here. The reason that I did that is that this is a large open platform. And like I said, they're using that data and recycling it into their system. It might not necessarily hurt anything to have these details, like what hospital or the student's name. It's definitely best practice to take anything personally identifying off. And if it's proprietary information about your organization, then that absolutely has to come off. But I just want you to note here that the email is devoid of all of those personal identifiers, but the response that we get is still going to be really strong. So you don't have to have that in order to get a great response. So here on the left is what AI gave me. And you guys can read through this, but when I look at this, I was having a hard time trying to respond to this student, in this scenario, because this is a very personal situation, but ultimately what the student is trying to do here is check a box. They don't want to get in trouble at school because of this family issue, and they just want to know that everything is going to be okay. But as a human being, I cannot ignore this issue that they had with their grandmother. And so when I look at the AI response where it says, I'm sorry, you have my support. You can have that extension. If you need anything else, let me know. Hope your grandmother's doing okay. And I think, yeah, that's basically what I want. Now, for me, because this is a person-to-person communication, I am not going to copy and paste this response, because this is a student who knows me, who has been in my class all semester, let's presume, and has probably received other emails from me. And I do not in any way want this email to feel like AI. And so what I am doing with this output is I'm using it as that instruction book. I'm using it as that guide for me to add my own personal details and writing style that's cohesive with myself. And so I said, you can, of course, have an extension for your paper. Another big change that I made here is instead of wishing your grandmother a speedy recovery, I'm thinking through that. I don't know what's happening with the grandmother. I could be stepping on, a potentially sensitive issue about whether this grandmother is likely to have a speedy recovery or exactly what's going on with them. And that's not my business. So instead, I'm sending my best to them and their family. And so that would be the process that I would go through. And it's relatively quick and can get me past that stopping point that I was stuck on of exactly do I want to say this? I know what I want to say, but how exactly do I say this? And this would be the process that I would use for any kind of response. It might be from my boss, a leader from outside the company, a client, anybody, where you want to make sure that you get the tone and content of this email right. And this is how I would use AI to do that. So the rest of the presentation, I'm going to be going over how to take content that you already have and personalize it for your audience. And I'm going to use a very personal example and trying to make something timely. So this is me on the iSpring platform. This is a screenshot here of me building out what this presentation would look like for you. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been listening to Taylor Swift's album all week. I know that it's something that is big in the news right now. You guys can let me know your thoughts on it, your favorite song, stick that in the chat there. But I want to make this introduction, not this basic writing that I have here. I want it to be a little bit more engaging. I want it to be themed around Taylor Swift's album, okay? And so right here, where there's those little purple stars, within the iSpring platform, that's where the AI component is. And so that's where I wrote the prompt that you can see with that little pink arrow. And I was really surprised by the quality of it, actually, how amazing of a response I got. So it did not just change that title, but it made this really interesting analogy comparing how you compose educational content or a training session to composing a symphony where you need to blend all these different messages into something harmonious that will resonate with your audience, and how you can use generative AI to be your maestro in, personalizing all of those basic notes so that at the end, once you've created your presentation, it will strike the right chord with your audience. And I'm like, I just thought that this would be a fun way to engage with Taylor Swift. And instead, I got this very pertinent analogy about, composing different things like music or a training presentation. And so, you can take that in any direction that you want into what might be engaging for your audience. So, this might be a generational thing. Maybe Taylor Swift is resonating better with the other millennials in the presentation versus other groups. But think about how you could do that with what you know about your own audience. For the next example, this is for an onboarding training. This is the example here. And there's 5 things I'm going to want to teach about onboarding. So this is going to be an in-person training, let's say, and these are the 5 different sections of the training. And I thought, well, there's going to be breaks between each session like there are on this one. What if we had a song playing that's going to represent the next section here? And so I asked AI, here are the 5 components of this presentation that I'm doing. Give me a song for each one. And again, I'm really happy with what it gave me. I think Welcome to the Jungle for orientation is great. That's what it's like entering a new company, a new job. Feels like you're entering a jungle and you don't know where you're going or, what the terms are, who the people I need to know are. Training with Eye of the Tiger. If you've ever seen any of the Rocky movies, that's exactly what I'm imagining, right? It fits perfectly, and a recognizable song to play that would get people excited. These are all pretty high energy songs that people might be able to sing along with. And I actually love number 5 as well, feedback, lean on me, right? So At the end of this onboarding, you want to let them know where they can go to get support, and that song is perfect. So again, I'm pretty happy with all of these, but not everything that you get from AI is going to be perfect, right? So let's say I didn't love the song for number 3, setting expectations. I wouldn't just accept this result then. I would go back to the AI underneath this output and say, the song for number 3, setting expectations, wasn't right. Give me 3 additional options of songs for this section. So you can always iterate and ask it for more if you didn't get what you want. And I always recommend asking for multiple examples as well. So if you're asking for an email subject line, instead of saying, give me 1 email subject line, give me 5. And then you'll have something to kind of pick through. But with moving this forward, I really like the welcome to the jungle for orientation. So in my actual presentation, maybe this is what the first slide of that presentation is going to look like. It's going to be jungle themed. The music will be playing. It's going to feel really cohesive, right? It's going to feel very intentional. And again, hopefully be something that's high energy and engaging for the audience. And to give you an idea of how to go even a step further with that, maybe the way that I talk about my onboarding process on social media about why my company is better at onboarding. I use this analogy again, that joining a company can feel like navigating through the jungle alone. You're disoriented, it's daunting. And our onboarding experience is a compass that will direct you to success. And by the end, you'll emerge from that jungle with all of the skills, all of the connections that you need. And again, just to disclose, this is written by AI, but I did edit this, okay? It didn't come out exactly like this, but this is the framework, and most of these ideas here came from the AI, but I do post a lot on social media, and I want to make sure that this text fits with the expectation that other people have of how I write. I don't want it to be an outlier or anything like that. So again, this is just an example of being creative, iterating, playing around with the AI. And by the end of it, you come through with this cohesive campaign with all of these different ideas that all fit together in one theme. So you may have elements already within your organization, catchphrases, mascots, themes that you already have. Think about how you can weave those through all of the different elements within what your work stream is to try to make everything feel very purposeful and cohesive, but also really engaging for your audience. For my last few examples, I want to take something that's probably one of the least read emails ever, which is the reminder email. Okay, reminder about this, right? And you kind of see the subject line and you go, okay, I remember, I'm done. So how do we get people to engage with that content a little bit better? So for this first example here, that onboarding training is going to be happening on July 2nd. And that is 2 days before the American holiday of Independence Day, or the 4th of July. So how do we represent that? We know that people are thinking about time spent at the beach or barbecuing with family, or maybe the fireworks that happen at that event. And so I asked the AI to take a basic reminder email, but infuse it with that theme of summer excitement and holidays. And I like a number of different elements on this. I like the little emojis in the subject line, get ready to soar, might get a click from somebody. Within the message, there's all these different subtle little things like ignite the spark of learning, or let's make waves this summer, that take that basic message and just make it a little more entertaining. I gave you the exact output, just copy and paste. You can even see at the bottom, best regards, brackets, brackets, brackets. So I would edit this. For me, this is a little too long for a simple reminder email. In fact, that whole middle paragraph that says this session promises, that's not really giving any information. I would probably delete that whole thing and just keep the part that reminds people about the date and time and to mark their calendars. That's really what I want people to hear. And so I would say that this is a pretty kind of standard way of doing this. You can take this a lot further. So this one is a Halloween one. This training is happening on October 31st on Halloween, and I'm going to have it written in the style of the poet and writer Edgar Allan Poe. And immediately from the subject line, there's something different and intriguing here that's not the standard. It says, invitation to partake in the rites of onboarding training. And this one is a little bit longer, but I really like this one. I would personally use this one. There's some really just kind of fun sections here. I love the part that says a gathering to initiate the uninitiated, to enlighten the eager minds with the secrets of our company's customs and lore. Okay, this is not your standard reminder email, right? And for me personally, this is beyond something that I could even come up with. But I definitely know that this is something that within my team, if people receive this from me, they're going to be talking about it. I might get some messages on Teams or Slack about it. And at the end there, it says, let not this spectral date elude thy memory, for attendance is both expected and esteemed. Mark your calendars with the ink of certainty and prepare your spirits for the journey ahead. So again, there's a couple things I would change. It uses the word solemn a couple different times, which is not the vibe that I want us going into this training with. Fits for Edgar Allan Poe, but there's some little edits that I would make. But again, I want you to use this example as a way to think about, geez, how far can you take this? I mean, this would be excellent if I was still teaching, if I was a high school English teacher and we were doing a unit on this. How cool would that be? Think about different ways that you could use this concept. And so just to wrap up before we have time for questions, hopefully all of these examples have gotten you kind of thinking, your brain spinning about ways that you could integrate AI better into your day-to-day workflow. I want to make sure that we ground ourselves in a little bit of caution about AI. And the first one is AI bias. So when we talk about those huge data sets, we're pulling information from all over the internet, all over the world, right? And we all know that there's bias out there in the world, and that's going to be reflected in that data. So if you are asking AI to write as a different person, as a different group, or even just within your own experience, you need to be reading through what it gives you with a thought about potential bias and whether that's apparent there. And if you have any questions about it, we're using AI, but we're using it as an assistant here. We're using it as a tool, and we want to make sure that humans are in control at the beginning of what we ask for and also of the final output. So talk to other people, get somebody else to look at it if you have any concerns. None of the examples that I gave here have anything to do with fact-based answers from AI. But the thing about AI is that it really wants to give you an answer. And if it doesn't know the answer, every once in a while, it will hallucinate an answer for you. So if you're getting facts that are, nonfiction, if you're getting true statements off of AI, make sure that they're true. Take some time to check those facts and make sure that they fit with reality before you use them. The next 2 points kind of go together. But when we're talking about open platforms, so not necessarily the AI that's built into, programs like iSpring, but when we're talking about ChatGPT, these big free open source platforms, if it's free, your use of it is the product, right? And I think we see that with Google, with YouTube, right? They want you to be engaging. They want you to get the ads. They want the data. And in this case, what they want is the data. They want your use of it because if you remember from the beginning, they're going to wrap that back into the program to try to make it better. So the caution with that is don't put in proprietary information that is not public. That should not be put into those systems. And don't put in personal information either. As you can see here, you can get excellent outputs without sharing any personal or confidential information. And I've probably said it 10 times, but it's worth saying for the 11th. Always review and edit these AI outputs. You don't want to be in a situation where you get a great response and copy and paste, and it says, and send it off, and your email starts out, dear bracket, insert name here, and bracket, we don't want a situation like that, right? And you also, again, want to make sure that when you put your name and the byline there and send that out, it's from you. And it really doesn't matter how it was created. It reflects on you and your work, and you want to make sure that, again, that you're using that tool as an assistant to get you on the direction of that perfect product. So again, I hope this gave you some different ideas for how you can use AI. It's definitely something that I integrate into my day-to-day workflow and have gotten some really fun and interesting outputs from. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Valerie. That was very inspiring. And I was very tempted to interrupt you and say, how about adding one extra section in the end of this training scenario that you had with the song "I'll Be There for You" in the very end of the onboarding? But I stopped myself because I really wanted to hear what you have next. So, guys, questions to Valerie are very much welcome in the chat. I just love how our audience has taken it, and they're really sharing their thoughts. And I love the comment from James, our tomorrow's speaker. He's saying that's the great use of AI as a partner, not as the SME, not as the subject matter expert. I think you can relate to that.
Yeah, there's a term for that called augmented intelligence, and that really kind of fits with this, right? So that's like AI number 2. So it's artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence. So we're using it as a kind of middle point as a tool or an assistant, but we really keep humans in control of both, what we're asking for and then eventually what we end up using.
Right. We have a comment, though, not a question, but I wonder if you would like to also reply to that from Diane. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. Different cultures have different versions of this name. I'm really sorry. I had getting those enter name here messages. I just delete them. If you don't know me, I won't engage with you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, even beyond that, I mean, that's clearly, just an error, but I think we also know when we're receiving an AI message. So I am in HR and recruiting, and some of those platforms also have some embedded AI, and you can tell when those messages have not been really reviewed by a human. And I think everybody is at this conference, right? HR, learning and design training. These are very human experiences, and we want to know that we're really talking to a human, or that a message is really from a human. So definitely something to be aware of.
Right, right. If you don't mind, there will be a question from me, because I do feel that there is this great, interesting intersection between my area of interest and your story. You've mentioned that adapting your message to different target audiences is one of the probably most logical ways to utilize AI. And I love the example of different generations, though my experimentation has always been around twisting the messages to different cultures and countries and target audiences of different cultural backgrounds. Because this is basically my job to make sure a certain specific culture reads the message clearly and does not read any subtext or context behind it that was not supposed to be there. Have you been experimenting in this regard? And can you say a few words about this, maybe, if you have?
Yeah, I definitely think this is something to be aware of. And it's interesting because as I was reviewing my slides, I realized that the two holidays I picked were pretty American focused, right? I know that obviously one of those holidays doesn't exist outside of this country, and the other one isn't necessarily celebrated the same way,
Or
right?
celebrated differently, yeah.
Right, exactly. It's a different thing. And, it makes me think about when I was living in Japan and all the students asked me for Christmas, I'm going to be eating fried chicken and cake.
Exactly.
And that's because that's the messages that they had received in Japan about what people ate, when it's
Mm.
actually in my family here, it'd be more like a turkey or a ham and cookies for Santa, right? And so I do think that that's something to be aware of. And, I think I kind of touched on it on the end there, but I do think that you could run those things through AI from like a DEI perspective and
Mm.
say, is there anything in here that wouldn't translate, or, translate this for a more European audience, right? For
Right.
example, or are there any references here? But I would still, again, err on the side of human intervention there. That I think it's a helpful tool, but it would still be something that I would, if I was you, I would consult somebody else first, right? A
Right.
human as before
Right.
I use that as like a final output.
And just a quick comment on my side, it's true that most of AI applications that we know are very America centered. And I even
Mhm.
had this experience when I asked, I think it was Dali or Midjourney, forgot. I think I even used both. So when we tried to picture a portrait of a person who holds a bunch of flowers, and the AI always gave me the American style of holding a bouquet of flowers, which is always the flowers upwards, right? Whilst the Europeans or Eastern European style is always having the blooming parts downwards, and it literally couldn't understand the whole concept. We tried more than 100 prompts to actually explain that you need to hold a bouquet of flowers in a specific fashion. No result whatsoever, because I guess it's just being fed on the American style of holding flowers, which is exactly in this specific fashion, not all the way around. So be careful of those biases, I should say.
Absolutely. I didn't include, I was trying to focus on some text-based outputs here, but I do think that the visual examples, are very telling. So if you go into Dolly and Midjourney, pick a couple different ones and ask them for an image of a doctor or something like that, right? As you keep asking for it, you're going to see some patterns that indicate that
Right.
bias. And I think that visually it's probably easier to see than in text, which is just a
Hmm.
reminder to be even more careful with
Conscious, yeah.
text because you don't see it right away. And if we don't address those biases, if we don't tell it this feels biased, give me, a different response, then guess what? It takes that input that we did and puts it back in as a correct response. And then it's only kind of like solidifying those
Yeah. Right.
biases. So definitely something to think
Thank
about.
you, Valerie. I wish we could
Thanks,
continue this
Chris.
conversation. It was very, very interesting. And I think a lot of people in the chat second my opinion. And if you don't mind, maybe you could stay with us for a little while and enjoy the company in the chat, because there are some extra questions that popped up just now. Maybe you want to answer them if you stay with us for a little longer.
Yeah, definitely. I'll go on there and start
Thank
working through
you.
those. Thank you so
Sure.
much.